First NFL game I ever watched, it was in Dallas. There's a lot of memories there. Obviously, back home in Texas. For me, it's special. Really doesn't matter unless we win.
Mayfield, shot, end zone, Evans! It's a touchdown!
I do think there's success to be had. It still hasn't been, up to where we're truly trying to go.
Move for Mike Evans, who gets loose. It's a touchdown for Tampa.
Come back to work and understand that we still haven't played our best, and what's that going to look like?
Mayfield wide open, McMillan walking.
It's cool. Touchdown's cool, but I want to win. I'm just focused on winning right now.
Bucky Irving, right on.
Go as Baker go. I mean, we know this is his team. As long as he go, we're going to go.
You embrace that opportunity of being under the bright lights, prime time.
It's the next opportunity, so I get juiced up for that no matter what, to continue to build and try and get better.
26-24, your final score on Sunday Night Football. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers come up short despite a chance to win the game with a field goal in the final 2 minutes. A costly fumble from Rachaad White allows the Cowboys to take over and win the football game. This was a battle. Not going to lie, this was a frustrating game from start to finish, a game that the Buccaneers certainly deserved to lose. We're going to dive into that and then some as we attempt to break this down. The Buccaneers fall short on Sunday Night Football. They fall to 8-7. They lose to a Cowboys team that advances to 7-8. Welcome back to a brand new edition of the Cannon Fire Podcast. I'm your host, Rhett Matthew, joined alongside me, as always, my good buddy and co-host from BucsNation.com, Evan Wanish. Now, Evan is here, having some technical shortcomings tonight, so he is joining us via mobile, but it is a pleasure to have you. It's not quite a pleasure to break this game down, and, joke's on me. I should have known on the game preview, being as overconfident as I was about certain matchups this week was going to bite me in the ass. I think hindsight being 2020 allows me to see the writing on the wall, which was inevitably a Cooper Rush masterclass and really a complete team loss for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers here, Evan. There's a lot of blame to be passed around. We're going to break down some of the good, bad, and definitely ugly here. But your thoughts overall on this game?
I mean, you pretty much broke it down there. Full team loss, right? I mean, I think you can pin some stuff on the defense, especially the first half, right? I think Dallas had their first 7 possessions. I think they scored on 6 of them. Now, granted, a lot of them were field goals, right? And the Bucs did a decent job of holding Dallas to field goals, but seemed pretty easy to get in that spot a lot of the time. And then in the second half, the defense was actually getting stops consistently, and the offense just could not find any answers. Defense only allowed 3 points in the second half, so that should be enough to win you a football game. I think if you would have said to a lot of Bucs fans, look, Bucs are going to be down at halftime, but the defense is only going to allow 3 points in the second half, I think most Bucs fans would say, well, the Bucs will probably win, and it might not even be close at the end of the day. But the offense sputtered down the stretch. I didn't love the overall game plan in the second half by Liam Cohen. I mean, look, when we sing his praises, we got to, criticize him a little bit. Baker Mayfield, 2 up and down. Didn't have any sort of answer for any of the Dallas pressures and blitz looks that they were giving them. And then obviously, turnovers, right? I mean, Jalen McMillan, it sucks because I thought had a good day, right? Catches the touchdown. I thought he had a good day. He's got to come down with that football. He has to be the one to come down with that football, not Jordan Lewis. 2 turnovers there by the Bucs offense late in the game pretty much sealed the deal. And obviously the Rachaad White thing, you got to hold the ball better than that. I mean, your ball security just simply has to be better in that spot. You got to have more awareness. And a mistake like that is costly, and you saw it there. So, yeah, it is definitely a pure team loss. It's not one thing or another. It's the coaching staff, it's the players, it's execution, it's scheme, and it's just not prepared to play. So, in the NFL, Dallas was eliminated, a couple hours ago from playoff contention. But, that doesn't matter. They're still professional athletes. They're still going to go out there, and they're going to try and perform. And I think the Bucs found out the hard way. So now, I mean, unfortunately, destiny is no longer in their hands. Now it shifts over to where they do need some help. They do need, most likely would be the Washington Commanders to beat the Atlanta Falcons. Now, hey, the Panthers are playing better football, but at the same time, it doesn't really matter if the Bucs don't win their last 2 games now, which the last 2 obviously become must wins for Tampa Bay.
Yeah, Carolina getting hot at the right time. Big time overtime win over the Arizona Cardinals today, eliminated them from playoff contention. But as for Tampa Bay, too many execution errors tonight. All the things that you had listed. On top of that, 2 high snaps early in the game from Graham Barton, which apparently snapping the football has become an issue these last couple of weeks, unfortunately. 2 big drops from Sterling Shepard. These are game-changing plays, and it's just stuff that we've talked about before. We probably discounted the Cowboys, considering, a couple hours before kickoff, they found out that their postseason hopes have been dashed with the Washington Commanders taking down the Philadelphia Eagles in a big upset win today. So they wanted to play upset, and they certainly did. The Bucs just did not match their aggressiveness. We got a $2 super chat here from DJ Warren, says he is pissed. He has another $2 super chat and says, I am pissed. Fire Bowles. Now, I don't want to give him the round of applause sound effect because you put that on top of a Fire Bowles thing. It's a people take it out of context, and it is what it is. But I do want to get your thoughts on the head coach, Todd Bowles. And I know you mentioned Liam Cohen. He will have his fair share of criticism this week because the offensive game plan was inconsistent. They couldn't find a rhythm, got away from running the football, I thought. I know that they were playing from behind, weren't playing with a lead. But even throughout that first half, I think Bucky Irving only had 8 carries. And with those 8 carries, he's averaging 6 yards a tote. So I don't know why they got away from that. You got wide receivers that are dropping passes, and eventually you got Baker Mayfield. We'll talk about his performance more here in a second. At times, who looked rattled in this game, tried to play hero ball, and caused a couple of mistakes. We'll talk about that. But let's address DJ Warren here. The Fire Bowls crowd going to really start to heat back up this week. Your thoughts on Coach Bowles and his position after this performance?
Look, I've had criticism of Todd Bowles and his defense and stuff, and I don't think the defense was great tonight, right? But at the end of the day, they gave this team a shot to win. They literally had an opportunity to win that football game down the stretch, and it was with a pretty poor start by the defense. Cooper Rush has sort of taken what the Bucs defense was giving them, and unfortunately, when the Bucs are a zone-heavy team, that's what's going to happen, right? Especially when you can't get a consistent pass rush from your edge rushers. Kalijah Kancey, I Bleav Diaby split that sack, a half sack there, but puts Kancey actually back in the team lead for sacks. So pretty cool there. But when you have that type of quarterback who's going to be patient, right, and take what you give him, it's going to be a lot of 4, 5, 3, 2, yard plays. That's just kind of like death by 1,000 paper cuts, basically. So, I don't think the defense executed well at all in the first half, especially, tackling. But, how can I pin that much on Todd Bowles? He's not going out there and tackling. But, this comes into question. And, look, we are going to have, if this team misses the playoffs, which, again, right now, they can win their last 2 games and still miss the playoffs. That's just the reality of the situation. If Atlanta wins their last 2 games, they're in, and the Bucs are probably out. So we'll have that conversation when we get to it. But I do know that this week, it's Christmas time, and I bet you a lot of Bucs fans around the area are going to be asking themselves at Christmas dinner, what do you think of Todd Bowles? So I'm not going to say his job security is locked in. I don't, but I also don't think he was, for me, he's not even a top 5 reason as to why they lost tonight. I just don't know if this is a real Bowles type of loss, to be honest with you.
But the timing of the loss, the way that they lost, Cooper Rush playing the way that he did, it is Tampa Bay Buccaneer timing at its finest. And Evan, you can attest, they just can't ever put themselves in a comfortable situation, can they? A win tonight would have allowed them to breathe easy for another week in a row and would have hired their percentage chance of getting into the postseason with a win in the NFC South Division. And now they are in a position, just like you said, they are going to be relying on other teams to lose. You're going to be rooting for Washington to take down the Falcons next week, and that's not necessarily the position you want to be in. Now, 2 big division games down the stretch here for Tampa Bay, but you needed to perform better than you did against Dallas, especially on prime time, a platform where the Buccaneers have struggled heavily this season. And if you're going to be a playoff team, you got to play no matter what. No matter the time, no matter the weather, you got to show up and play your best, and the Buccaneers did not do that tonight. We got a couple more Super Chats to acknowledge here. DJ Warren really laying it on the table. Got a couple more $2 Super Chats from DJ. Let's clap it up for the guy. Really appreciate you guys tonight. And we also got, excuse me, mother, Lick Mataint with a $4.99 Super Chat. Says, why was Rachaad White even in the game? Stubborn coaches. Your thoughts on Rachaad White being the running back for the Buccaneers offense on that final offensive possession? We know the key fumble and the takeaway from that Dallas secondary, who played a really strong game in their own right this evening. But Rachaad White being the guy to unfortunately cough this game up. A lot of fans are going to be quick to point the finger at him. You know, after a loss like this, people are very quickly looking for players to blame. But your thoughts on Rachaad White and the situation there on that final drive?
I mean, look, like Rachaad White's still a good football player. I mean, I think Bucky Irving's success has kind of made people like forget about Rachaad White, or think like Rachaad White's just bad because he doesn't have the same flash and doesn't have as much explosiveness as Bucky Irving does. They're 2 different players, you know? And I think mostly Rachaad White is in there mostly because of his pass protection. And I do think he's probably a little bit of a better receiving back than Bucky Irving is. So when you're running that 2-minute drill and no timeouts, you know, who do you want in there? I get it, right? And I think you wouldn't really be having that conversation if somebody else had fumbled. Like you wouldn't have really noticed it probably had Rachaad White not been the guy to get the ball and then to fumble the ball. So I don't mind it, but I mean, you know, like Bucky Irving is the best running back on the team. The Bucs know that, but that doesn't mean Rachaad White can't get his as well.
No, and he was active in the pass game tonight. I mean, he was getting his targets, 7 receptions, 51 yards for Rachaad White. He only ran the ball 3 times for 10 yards, but they established the roles. And like you said, I think his help in pass protection goes a long way. Bucky Irving does a lot of things well for a rookie running back, but we've said it before, we'll say it again. You can watch this game again, and you'll see it on the tape. Rachaad White is a better pass blocking back, and I think Bucky Irving, if I'm not mistaken, had kind of whiffed one of those blitz pickups tonight that he was supposed to protect Baker. And I know that Baker got happy feet, tried to play hero ball at some times, maybe is responsible for a couple of those sacks tonight. I think Dallas ended up finishing with 4-5 sacks on Baker Mayfield, so one of the stronger performances a defensive line has had against Tampa Bay. But overall, looking at the running backs, you know, I think really we have to acknowledge the great play from the defensive back there. You know, a good heads-up play to just follow through on the football and come up with it on the other side of that tackle. I cannot remember the name of the defensive back who made the play, but it seemed like the Dallas secondary.
I think it was Bland. I'm pretty sure it was Bland.
I mean, the entire Dallas secondary seemingly was playing out of their mind tonight. So, you know, as much as people want to harp on Rachaad White, I do think to some degree we have to recognize, like, some of these guys were just making plays. You know, the Jalen McMillan interception, that's on Jalen McMillan to look that in, but that is a ridiculous play for any defensive back to make.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good play. I mean, and like you said, I mean, you know, I'm always a proponent of, you know, sort of at times when it's warranted, tipping your cap to the opponent, right? Like they get paid to make those plays as well. Like they're not just going to lay down. So yeah, there was a lot of Dallas's defense in particular played well. Now the Buccaneers didn't do themselves any favors, right? The Bucs didn't do themselves any favors, and in the first half, and I didn't really do much of this in the second half. But just in the first half, there's a few very, very small things that I think could have changed this game. So the first one I have is the Mayfield bobble on 3rd down in the first quarter, which led to him not being able to grip the laces and throw the ball to an open Rachaad White, dirted it, and it ended up being fourth down. On that fourth down, that is obviously the big one, but on that fourth down, Sterling Shepard wide open, drops the ball.
Yeah.
That changes the whole thing, right? Dallas ends up scoring a touchdown after taking over on downs there. So that simply cannot happen. I mean, it's that simple. You have to catch that ball.
You know, it felt like there were a lot of situations tonight where there'd be offensive possessions, and it felt like the Bucs were just living behind the sticks. They were constantly in long-to-go situations, staring down the barrel of a 3rd and 15, a 1st and 15, whether it was just a back-breaking penalty or something, or a sack, a costly sack and a costly situation to knock them out of field goal range. Like, there were just so many things that happened at the worst possible time. And we said it before, like, it's a complete team loss, but in a lot of ways, too, the Bucs beat themselves. Like, they were in a position to march down the field with less than 2 minutes to go and kick a game-winning field goal. I just, shit, man. Like, what else can you say?
Yeah, I mean, it's one that, it's one that got away from him, and another thing that I thought, about another small thing was the Jalen McMillan. So it's 2nd and 5. Baker Mayfield throws to McMillan, catches the ball. They look at it, say it's not a catch. I thought it was a catch.
Yeah.
I don't think the NFL knows what a catch is. He caught the football. Like he simply did. That actually led to a 3rd down, which the Bucs didn't convert. And then on that ensuing drive, and this isn't obviously a small thing, but no offensive pass interference called on CeeDee Lamb, and Dallas scores a touchdown there. When he clearly puts a hand on Zion McCollum, the hold happened. McCollum held him earlier in the play, but you got to call the OPI too.
You got to put it out there before the people jump on you, because maybe we have a couple of Dallas fans in the live chat tonight. The referees are not the reason the Buccaneers lost this game, but good God almighty. I mean, there's only been a handful of times this season, probably twice. This will be the 3rd time where we can say these officials were awful. Like, this was one of the worst crews I think we have seen. They couldn't consistently call what they wanted to call. It seemed like they were changing the rules. They were changing the measuring stick, if you will, on what was a catch, what wasn't a catch, picking up flags, turning plays over. It was kind of a shit show out there tonight.
Yeah, not good. And like I said, they ended up calling the hold on McCollum early in the play, and it's a hold. It wasn't. They got that call right, but you have to call that offensive pass interference. I Bleav they would have offset, and then it would have been 3rd down again. So if the Bucs get a stop there, get off the field, who knows what happens? So it's those small things, right, in a half of football that make a difference, and it's just those tiny things that are the difference between a win and a loss. And I think that's the frustrating part, right? And I almost think it might not be as frustrating had the Bucs maybe not had a chance at the end. I think maybe had they just sort of fell flat and whatever. But I think the frustrating part is though they had the chance. And then it just kind of fell apart, and they had the chance to win the game with a field goal, right? We know Chase McLaughlin. We know he has a strong leg. Maybe not as strong as Brandon Aubrey. I mean, that dude is ridiculous. He is like Justin Tucker isn't Justin Tucker anymore. Like, Brandon Aubrey is like the new, if you cross the 50, you're almost guaranteed to get 3 points. He's nuts.
And I mean, he's knocking in 3, 4, 50-plus yarders tonight, and they weren't 51, 52 yarders. They were 56, 58. Let me see. I think I got the numbers written down.
I think he hit 2 58-yarders right into the net.
Yeah. He was, 3 50-plus yard field goals. He is absolutely a weapon, just like you said. I thought I had the numbers written down here, but I guess not. Going back into the live chat here, I want to shout out our good buddy DJ once again for another $2 super chat.
Appreciate you.
DJ Warren says, the offensive line is bad. Oh, my God. 4 sacks for the Dallas Cowboys against Baker Mayfield tonight. We can talk about the offensive line and then leapfrog our way into Baker Mayfield's performance. But, I thought coming into this game, we said, as far as the Cowboys defensive line, the Bucs need to make sure they focus on one guy, that is number 11, Micah Parsons. And I thought for the first half, they did a decent job. But in the second half, when things started to really, fall apart as far as the quarterback play goes, that's when Micah Parsons and really Dallas as a whole, their defensive line, their defensive coordinator turned up the pressure. They were getting after Baker in that third quarter. They were affecting him. And then eventually Micah Parsons becomes a problem. He gets a sack, and the pressure just continued from there. It didn't feel like the Buccaneers pass game found a consistent rhythm until later in the game when they started with the no huddle at the very end of the game there.
Yeah, and I think that may be a product of what you said earlier about living behind the sticks.
Yeah.
You know, I think because when you're living in second and long and third and long, that gives the pass rushers opportunities, right? And that gives them they're able to just tee off kind of in a way. So yeah, the Bucs offensive line I thought played pretty well in the first half. I don't think so there's a difference between having a bad game and being bad. I think they're a top 5 offensive line, to be honest with you. I think they're around the fringes there of being a top 5 offensive line. But a lot of the offensive success that they've had this year is because of that offensive line. And I thought they did decent at times tonight, but it was clear, and that's on Cohen as well. That's on the offensive game plan that they just did not have an answer when Dallas was sending those pressure packages at them. They didn't really know what to do. And Baker Mayfield also didn't have a plan. The pressure was coming and he kind of panicked. Right, you get hit a couple times. You mentioned, playing, hero ball, right? That fumble. I mean, dude, just take the sack. Take the sack or throw the ball away.
Well,
that can't happen.
Yeah, we had a couple of fumble scares. There was the one where the referees go look at the replay and they turn the play back over. But there were a couple of times tonight where Baker Mayfield just trying to do too much could have put the Bucs in a much worse situation.
Yeah. It just, so I think they... Yeah, and you're seeing a trend, right? Because again, and I hate to come back to sort of what I said earlier in the week, but I compared this week to kind of, the Detroit win and then the Denver game, right? What happened in that Denver game? Denver was able to get a lot of pressure, right? And yes, Luke Gedeke was not in that game. I understand that, but Denver was able to get a lot of pressure and affect Baker Mayfield multiple times throughout the entire game. Now, it wasn't on that level this time, right? The Bucs had a lot more success, particularly on the ground in this game. But at the same time, that's what the difference is. And that's why the Bucs couldn't really score until it was too late. They scored a touchdown with under 3 minutes to go. And it's too late. So if you would have done that, because the defense was getting stop after stop after stop, and you couldn't do anything with it. You were either punting the ball or turning the ball over. So, yeah, there was too often where Baker Mayfield just kind of – and it's, again, because I know we have a lot of Baker Mayfield fans, it is not all on Baker Mayfield, okay? He did some good things. I actually thought there was a solid stretch of this game that he played well.
He did, absolutely.
I thought he played well for a solid stretch, but there was those plays. You take those – there's 3 or 4 plays a game that they simply matter too much. And the interception, I'm not really going to put on him. That's a 50-50 ball that just didn't really go your way. I still think McMillan has to come up with that, but it's also a really good play. But the fumble, obviously the Bucs didn't lose the fumble. That was the one where it went out of bounds and everything. Like that ball, you have to take that sack or throw the ball away. Just take the loss. And he took a couple of sacks. So, yeah, the offensive line, the numbers may not look great, but I think the quarterback was causing a lot of it. And there was a lot of up and downs tonight for Baker Mayfield, as we've seen throughout this entire season, to be honest with you.
I think what matters as well here is the context of the Buccaneers defense and their shortcomings this season. Now, as far as this game goes, I want to make it clear. We've said it before, going to say it again. This was a complete team loss. You can point at both sides of the football. You could point at the coaching staff. All would be correct answers as to why the Bucs lost this game. But it feels like in a game like tonight, that first half, the Bucs give up 23 points, well over 230 yards. Cooper Rush is playing like a madman. He's playing probably the best game of his career. Maybe the easiest game I've seen a quarterback play in a very long time against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It really did seem like 3 5-step drop. His first option is usually wide ass open. I mean, the Bucs were giving him plenty of cushion there in that first half. But they hunker down in the second. They start getting stops. They get after the quarterback a little bit more. Your offense just can't get back in the game. And it feels like the way that they've performed in the second half these last couple of weeks, we should have expected them to really, I guess, come on a lot stronger than they did. Still, we're in a position to march down the field and kick a game-winning field goal. Let's not forget that. Mm-hmm. But my whole point here is the context with these turnovers, man. They are game wreckers. But they are game wreckers because it feels like the margin of error is incredibly thin when you have a defense that is inconsistent as the Buccaneers defense has been. Like, the definition of inconsistent, Evan, is giving up 23 points and 240 plus yards in the first half and then only giving up 3 points in the second half. Would you say that is inconsistent for an NFL defense?
I think that's pretty darn inconsistent, yes.
Yeah,
and we've seen that at stretches too.
It should have been enough to win. The offensive mistakes in the second half, the game-losing fumble, that lost you the game. But all of that factors into a complete team loss. And I just feel like that kind of goes along with the tone of the Buccaneers season. Like, these offensive turnovers are going to hurt. But when you've got a defense and you don't know whether they're going to get a stop or not, man, they just kill you. They kill you. Let's shout out DJ Warren one more time with another $2 super chat.
Appreciate you.
He is going to be
he's making sure that we're eating Wendy's every day this week, even on Christmas.
Well, he is our Fire Bowls guy this week. He says it's over. Hashtag Fire Bowls. So listen, the more super chats, the more we'll say Fire Bowls. But that's going to be a heavy topic of conversation throughout the rest of the week. Is going to be Todd Bowles. And to be honest with you, Evan, I know we just talked about the inconsistent defense, but with the performances from the offense that we have seen in the second half lately, only allowing 3 points in the second half, you said it should have been enough to win this ball game, and it really wasn't down the stretch here.
Yeah, that's the frustrating part. But I think one of the differences here is when you look at it, you talk about the turnovers, right? Buccaneers had, 2 turnovers, I Bleav, right? Two pretty critical ones. I'm pretty sure. Two, and then 2 that were called turnovers, but then overturned. Cowboys had 0, and there's your difference, right? Like there is your in a 2-point game. The Bucs had 2 turnovers and the Cowboys had 0. So if that's flipped, I think you see a different result tonight. I simply do. And the thing is, you talk about Cooper Rush having an easy day. The one mistake he makes, the Bucs can't capitalize on because he makes an errant throw, and J.J. Russell just guess that's why that dude's on defense, because he couldn't catch it. I mean, he just simply dropped the ball. So the Bucs now move in the Todd Bowles era, and this will be fun for DJ. The Bucs move in the Todd Bowles era on prime time. They move to 3-8 on prime time. So not great. And I mean, I get it. Like, a lot of times you're playing, the better teams on prime time and stuff like that, and what have you. But 3-8's 3-8, and there's not great. And technically, they have not won on prime time since Tom Brady left. So those 3 wins were all with Tom Brady in the 2022 season. They haven't won since.
Evan, you're not going to believe this, but we have got another pair of $2 super chats from DJ Warren over on YouTube. DJ, you're keeping us fed, brother. I mean, you are single-handedly.
I really do.
Yeah, we appreciate you. A couple more hot takes on the offense here, and we will wrap up the conversation on the offense. He says the offense was abysmal in the first half, and Rachaad White is done in Tampa. That's a hot take. That'll be an interesting talking point by the end of the year. I think he's got a little bit of time, but we will see what happens. I don't think he's going anywhere for the rest of this season, though, that's for sure. Rachaad White will be the Buccaneers running back. They're not going to run him out of town just yet. But really wanted to just wrap up the offensive side here and overall get your thoughts on Baker Mayfield. We touched on it briefly. 31 for 43 passing, 304 yards through the air, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. And again, we talked about some of the hero ball, some of the paralysis by analysis, they call it. Just trying to do too much out of the pocket, sometimes putting your team in a very precarious situation and almost turning the ball over at other times. There were times tonight Baker looked great. I mean, in that first half, took care of the football, looked sharp. You know, if Sterling Shepard isn't dropping passes wide open in the middle of the field, we're potentially talking about 1 or 2 more scoring drives for this Buccaneers offense in that first half. So an up and down day for Baker. Overall, your thoughts here? Because a lot of people are going to have a lot of thoughts. You know, he is one of the more divisive guys on the roster.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's and this isn't the worst game he's played, right? Like there's been times like he's played worse in Bucs wins. He's played worse.
Yeah.
Particularly, I think that Carolina game, like I honestly think he was probably worse, like than he was tonight. But again, and that's obviously Sterling Shepard dropping that ball. That's not on him. And who knows what happens in that drive? Because it was going to put him in field goal range, so you're guaranteed basically 3 points. At that point, at least that would have tied the game at that point. But at the same time, we've seen a lot of the same issues that we've seen with Baker Mayfield, right? When there's pressure and he tries to play hero ball or he gets happy feet. And I think Chris Collinsworth, who I like Mike Tirico, but I can't stand Collinsworth at this point. But Collinsworth, but he had made a comment. He said like it was late in the game. I forget if it was the drive that they scored the touchdown on or not. But he was like, Baker Mayfield's like, seems like he's a little spooked by this pass rush because like he got out of there quick, and that's been an issue, right? When you're able to affect Baker Mayfield, that's almost like becomes his first instinct is to evade the pocket, probably a little bit too early and earlier than he has to. I thought he did some nice things with his legs today. Thought he did a nice job extending some plays, but again, it wasn't enough, and they go through these lulls during games where they just can't really get anything going, and you can't have it right now, especially when these games are so critical down the stretch. You need to be better, and hopefully Mayfield puts together 2 solid performances against teams that like Carolina. Even last year, like Mayfield wasn't great in either game against Carolina last year, and then obviously this year I don't think he was that great. So he has a chance to maybe redeem himself here, get the Bucs, in a good position again. But I don't think he played awful, but it's just I don't think he played good enough, as good as they needed him to in this one.
On the other side of the football here, I want to talk about some of the shortcomings of the Buccaneers defense. There were some things they were able to do well. Kalijah Kancey, another bright spot along that defensive line. Him and Yaya Diaby splitting the sack, as you had mentioned earlier. But execution errors across the board on both sides of the ball for the Buccaneers tonight. On defense, I think one of the leading stories is going to be missed tackles. When Cooper Rush wasn't throwing to a wide open receiver, he was handing the ball off to Rico Dowdle, or he was hitting a guy on a check down who would break a tackle or two and then pick up 5, 10, 15, 20 more yards. After tonight's game, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are tied for last amongst all teams in the NFL with 70 missed tackles against the pass. Unacceptable. Simply unacceptable. You can blame a lot of things on the head coach. You can blame that on Todd Bowles. You can blame it on the defensive staff. I've seen, again, a lot of finger pointing happens after losses like this. We want to try and break things down with a level head here. Todd Bowles isn't out there missing tackles, but he also has a coaching staff that has had a tackling issue all season long with some experienced players on the defense. I mean, even Levante David probably had one of his worst games of the season tonight when we talk about the grand scheme of his 2024. And missed tackles are the main reason why. That was one of the biggest issues on defense tonight, I thought.
Yeah, one of my main takeaways watching the defense, I was like, man, Levante David is having a rough go of it out there. And he made some plays, as he's going to, right? Like he's even in his rougher games, he's always going to make some plays. But
Particularly in pass coverage, they were targeting him at times in pass coverage, just going right at him. And look, man, when the other linebacker opposite of you is J.J. Russell, and Levante David starts to struggle in pass coverage, that becomes an issue, right? Obviously, Dallas's first touchdown was against David in coverage. Dallas had a couple other big plays with David in coverage. He's good going forward, right? Going forward, but whenever you have the backpedal, right, and he's starting to turn his head and run, he's slowed down there, and it's okay. I mean, that's okay, but I'm not saying that that's unacceptable. It's father time. He's not the same player. I don't expect him to be, but I thought he had a rough go of it tonight. Pass rush, wasn't really there, but again, Cooper Rush, I think they actually said on the broadcast that Cooper Rush gets the ball out the second fastest in the NFL, only behind Tua. So, he gets the ball out in 2.38 seconds or something. So, when he's getting the ball out that quick, and like you said earlier, it always seemed like his first read was open, whether it was a big play or not. Even if it gained 3 yards, it seemed like his first read was always kind of open, and that's just where he went. So, it's a tough game to sort of really, analyze the pass rush, but you could have made a couple plays there. I thought Zion McCollum and Jamel Dean both had up and down days. Penalties were an issue, but yeah, the missed tackling is a major concern, and that's something. Look, I mean, it is partially on the coaching staff because in training camp, that's what you need to teach, right? You need to get this team to be better tacklers. That's what you should be spending half your freaking time on in practice now. But at the same time, these are professional football players, right? I mean, you're playing at the highest level of football possible. Make a tackle, right? There's only so much that a coach can help you with at that point. So, and they almost missed tackles actually almost ended this game before it even was over.
Yeah.
Because Christian Izien whiffs on a tackle, and luckily Vita Vea was there to clean it up, or else they would have gotten the first down and ended the game right then and there. So, yeah, the missed tackles are an issue. Look, obviously, I don't know if changing a head coach is going to do much for that, right? I don't know if I think that's sort of a player thing. Changing a head coach out isn't going to make J.J. Russell catch the ball. Yep. Right? It's not going to make Levante David, suddenly become, 10 times better and throw back to 2015 like he was in pass coverage. That's not going to happen. But it's a weird game to criticize the defense because they weren't great in the first half, but they gave this team a shot. And you could argue that maybe Dallas was playing a little bit conservative, in the second half from time to time. Especially down the stretch, maybe just trying to run some clock. But, I mean, this defense only gave up 3 points. They only gave up 3 points in the second half. And this is they pitched a shutout last week in the second half.
Yeah.
And they only give up 3 points. In the last 2 third and fourth quarters of football that this team has played, they've given up 3 points total. So I have a tough time completely criticizing the defense. But again, they don't really have a closer, right? They don't have a guy that is going to come up with the big interception, right? Deron Bland comes up with the big fumble, right, to end the game for Dallas. Tampa Bay doesn't really have that type of dude right now, right? Antoine Winfield Jr. can be when he's in the lineup, and I mean, he's had an up and down year, but he wasn't there, obviously. He can be that guy. He hasn't really been this year, which has been an issue. But, I think this defense needs more closers. They need more guys to step up in the clutch when you need them to. And right now, yes, it's a scheme issue. I think Todd Bowles' scheme is an issue. But I also just, literally right when J.J. Russell dropped the ball, I literally said out loud, I was like, they just simply do not have the players in some of these spots. And I get it. He's in because KJ Britt is out. But it's not like KJ Britt was good either, right? Everybody was criticizing KJ Britt. So, defense, like many of the Buccaneers, a roller coaster, I would say.
Breaking news here. You're not going to believe this. We got another pair of $2 super chats from DJ Warren. He says, Jamel Dean gotta go. So some more hot takes here regarding personnel changes from DJ Warren. We appreciate your support, and shout out to Mike.
Yeah, DJ. Can you be in here every episode just spitting out your takes?
Yeah, we appreciate you, man. And shout out to Mike Suringer for a $2 super chat, his first ever super chat here on the Cannon Fire Podcast. We appreciate you, Mike. Yeah, so again, taking a look at this game for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I think on the defensive side of the ball, another thing that we can attribute and say that they did well, we said that Rico Dowdle coming into this game was going to be a center point for the Cowboys offense, and that was evident in the first half. They tried to get him involved early and often, especially in that first that first opening drive that they had. 13 carries, 23 yards, and only 1.8 yards per carry for Dowdle. And Turpin, the speedy second back that they have, 3 carries and 11 yards for him. They obviously got away from running the football because, Cooper Rush was just throwing the football as well as he was today. They were giving up. The Buccaneers defense was giving up chunk plays, so it was making it very easy for Dallas to cover a lot of ground without relying on the running backs. But even when they were in a position to control this game on the ground, the Bucs, I thought, did a decent job of taking away that option for them.
I mean, yeah, Dowdle had 13 attempts for 23 yards, 1.8 yards average. I mean, that's and we talked on the game preview about how important Dowdle has been to their offense and how good he's been. And I'm sure a lot of Dallas fans were probably expecting a lot more out of him in this one. But yeah, when you got your quarterback throwing for darn near 300 yards, and not really much adversity, I guess you don't really need to run the ball that much. But I mean, look, the Bucs did a good job of limiting him, and even in the passing game, 3 catches for 28 yards. So I thought they did a pretty decent job there of keeping him in check, and it's something we knew Dallas was going to want to rely on. They have relied on. It's just didn't really need it, unfortunately for the Buccaneers. And look, this Bucs run defense isn't what it once was, right? Like it was like 2020 and 2021. Like teams simply didn't try it, right? Like you knew that like you weren't going to be able to run on the Bucs. But this is still a solid run defense, I would say. It's not quite on that level, but it's still a solid run defense. It's just, coming up with those plays when they matter.
You're not going to believe this. An unexpected development here. Another $2 super chat from DJ Warren. He says, I watch every Sunday. So, DJ, we appreciate your support, my friend, and appreciate you throwing it on the table. I wish it were under better circumstances. Like, I love clapping it up for the guy. Probably one of the biggest super chatters we've ever had, and unfortunately, it's after one of the more disappointing losses on the Buccaneers season. Evan, want to get your final thoughts here as we start to wrap up. The Buccaneers now 8-7. I would love for this team to get to 10 wins this year. I feel like that's an uphill battle now for a Todd Bowles-led Tampa Bay Buccaneers football team. Like it just feels like they are destined for 8 or 9 wins every single year now at this pace. And we had begged the question earlier this season when the Bucs were riding high. And then 4 weeks later, amidst their month-long losing streak, we asked it again. I'll float it to you this time. You don't have to get as in-depth, but is this, the peaks and the valleys of a Todd Bowles football team? Because this is all going to factor in to the conversation at the end of the season about Todd Bowles, his future as Buccaneers head coach. But have we seen the best that he has to offer as Tampa Bay Buccaneers head coach? Are the Buccaneers doomed to mediocrity? Are they doomed to, fighting for these division titles and trying their damnedest to reach 10 wins? Like it's been a fun season at times, but it's starting to feel more prototypical with this regime. And I think a lot of people, aren't as patient. I know that Todd Bowles is going to have these division titles. He's going to have these playoff appearances, but when your team doesn't look as good as they should, or they're losing winnable games, or you simply have these issues that we keep having, where's your head at with it? Do you think the Bucs have shown us the best that they possibly can with Todd Bowles as head coach?
I mean, look, I would probably say yes in terms of like game by game performance, right? Like, there's been some performances where we're like, man, like they're clicking this and that, like this is great, like like where it's like, all right, like you can't really get much better, to be honest with you, right? Like, but it does feel like, I mean, look, dude, they play the Panthers and the Saints. Both games are at home, okay, but it's two teams that have played them relatively tight, right? Like, I mean, they should have lost to Carolina a few weeks ago. Like they really should have. If Chuba Hubbard doesn't fumble, they do lose that game. So you play a Carolina team who's been playing better football as of late. Really, I mean, look, the Bucs are on a 4-game winning streak, but if you're looking at the NFC South, maybe you'd have the Bucs, playing the best football. Carolina's probably right behind them, right? I mean, in terms of playing, who's playing the best quality of football.
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't result in some wins for Carolina. And then you got the Saints who, like I said, have won, like, I think 4 out of their last 5 in Tampa. Like the Bucs have struggled against the Saints in Tampa. Bucs had an opportunity to clinch the division last year in a game against the Saints in Tampa and couldn't get it done. So now, yeah, you need to win those 2 games just to reach 10 wins. And, like, at some point, like you said, the division titles are nice, right? Back-to-back division titles. You win a playoff game last year. You take Detroit down to the wire in the divisional round. That's all good. But at some point, you need to see progress, right? And I do wonder, because I think that the toughest decision for the Bucs would be is if they win both these football games, right? They beat Carolina, they beat New Orleans, but they still miss the playoffs because Atlanta beats Washington and beats Carolina to end the year. And Atlanta wins the South. Bucs miss the playoffs, go 10-7 though. What do the Bucs do then? I think that's a very interesting decision. Again, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Hopefully we don't have to get to it. Hopefully in 3 weeks' time, we're previewing a playoff game and not talking about what this team needs or if they should promote Liam Cohen to head coach, right? Hopefully we're not talking about that. But, I mean, we might – I mean, it does – I'm going to give the honest opinion, like I always do. It feels like 10 wins is probably the max like a Todd Bowles-led team is going to be able to get. It does feel that way. And look at that. You're sort of on pace for that right about now. So I do think he needs some players, right? Like this pass rush isn't where it needs to be. The linebacker core isn't where it needs to be. But at the same time, it's going to fall on somebody. And at some point, I wonder when it falls on the head coach.
Some more final thoughts here just on the game itself. We didn't really mention this, but no Cade Otton for the Buccaneers offense, and I think that played a much bigger factor than most people are saying. Payne Durham was your featured tight end 1 for the game. I thought we'd see a little more Devin Culp, but we did not, despite him being activated. Cade Otton, he's one hell of a blocker, but he is one hell of a bailout target for Baker Mayfield at times, and I think that is... again, something that he was missing tonight that really went a long way. They felt that.
I think they did. And look, I think Durham did okay. I mean, he didn't do anything flashy. Like, it wasn't anything insane, but I thought he did his job. But yeah, Otton's clearly the best tight end on this team. And I do think they definitely missed him. Obviously, Sterling Shepard leaving the game very quickly pronounced out.
Yeah,
which you could tell, right? As soon as he came up, he was limping. You could tell it was a hamstring. I wonder if maybe he's done for the year because, that hamstrings, if he was ruled out pretty quickly, which might mean it's kind of serious. And you wonder.
Older guy, too.
Yeah, I mean, you wonder with only a couple weeks left in the season, even if you make the playoffs, you wonder how realistic it is for him to potentially come back and help you. But I thought Payne Durham did okay, but I do think this team missed Cade Otton, particularly in the run game as well, because he's been a really important run blocker for them. He's done a really good job of that. Setting up some holes for the running backs to run through. So I do think they missed him in more ways than one, not just in the passing game.
Yeah, I also thought, Jalen McMillan stepping into his role a little bit more with the absence of Sterling Shepard here over the next couple of games. Maybe we see him featured. Maybe we see defenses start to game plan for 15 a little bit more. But, I mean, he is stepping up in his own right. Had that ugly play, the big deep bomb that should have been a touchdown. It's an interception. Great heads-up play by the defensive back. Really a rookie mistake by McMillan to not just look that thing in and hang on to the ball. But he's coming around, and I think you got to like the progress we have seen from him here to close out the season. We're going to need him to step up more and more over these next couple of weeks. Of course, we'll keep you updated throughout the rest of the week with any injury news and updates as we get them. Also, be on the lookout for best and worst players from this game. On top of that, more great Bucs coverage over on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/cannonfirepodcast. Checking in with a live chat one last time. You're not going to believe this, Evan. To close the show, we have got a pair of $2 super chats from DJ Warren. Clap it up one more time for DJ. Thank you very much, man.
The real MVP.
Seriously, I mean, Bucs player of the game tonight, DJ Warren, coming in from the top rope. He says, new regime, please. He doesn't even have high hopes for Liam Cohen. DJ has been very active in the chat tonight, and he's not even one of those people who says make Cohen head coach. He's just ready to move on, rip the Band-Aid off entirely. We'll have that conversation after the season is over. But as for right now, the Buccaneers with 2 tall games left on their schedule within the NFC South. And Evan, like you said, 2 teams that have played the Buccaneers pretty tight so far. I know they ran away with it against New Orleans, but this is New Orleans. They typically play well in Tampa. So the Buccaneers with 2 very critical home games coming up here to close out the regular season. But ladies and gentlemen, that's just about going to do it for today's post-game episode of the Cannon Fire Podcast. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Had close to 300 people in here tonight for the post-game live stream. We truly appreciate all of your support. Follow the show on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those are Cannon Fire Podcast. Best place to go for updates on the show. And of course, Tampa Bay Buccaneer news as it happens. Speaking of Bucs news as it happens, you can follow my co-host Evan on Instagram at Bucs_daily. You can also find him on Twitter at EvanNFL and check out his written work at BucsNation.com. What have you got this week?
Got the post-game reactions, which should be interesting. To say the least, should be interesting. A wide range, I think, of emotions, right, in this game. So got that on Bucs Nation. And, just finishing up the regular season. Hard to believe that there's only 2 regular season games left. Hard to believe we're at this point. But, and then obviously on the Cannon Fire Podcast YouTube channel, we'll have best and worst. We'll have later in the week, we'll have betting the Bucs. We'll have players to watch for the upcoming game against Carolina. Probably no midweek show this week as it is Christmas. I want to wish you all a Merry Christmas. Appreciate you guys listening. Really happy holidays to all you guys. Don't let the Bucs loss get you down, right? It's just it's okay, So I want to wish you guys a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. But if you guys are just sitting around, after dinner, after a big meal right on the holidays, sitting around, you want to talk some Bucs. Turn on the Cannon Fire Podcast YouTube channel and check out all of our short video content. Or, if you want to, torture yourself, I guess you can re-listen to this if you'd like. I don't know.
I'm gonna let it affect my mood. I'm gonna let it ruin my week. Todd,
you're not the only one.
Ruined my Christmas.
The ultimate Grinch.
Yeah. Thanks, Todd. Last but not least, you can find myself, Instagram and Twitter at Rhettakus, RHETTAKUS. If you follow me, I will follow you back. Get at me on the Twitter machine. We can yell about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. If you don't like the way that we broke down your favorite quarterback, Baker Mayfield, let us know. We are very active on Twitter. Go check us out at Rhettakus, at EvanNFL, and at CannonFirePod. For more Red and Pewter takes, can't get enough of it. We will talk to you later this week. Once again, happy holidays. Thank you, folks, for choosing to hang out with us and support the show. Tune in, argue with us, subscribe, unsubscribe, leave a thumbs down, leave a thumbs up. All of it helps, and we truly wouldn't be able to do it without you. I'm your host, Rhett Matthew, signing off from my co-host, Evan Wanish. We will talk to you in the next one. Until then, and as always, thank you for listening, and go Bucs.